Hi and welcome to Rose Red Homestead. This is a video that I have been promising to do for a really long time, so I know a number of you are going to be pleased to see this when it comes out. We're going to learn how to make jerky today according to our family recipe. This recipe has been in our family for years and years and years. The reason that I like it is that it is so quick and so easy. And so we're going to get started on this in just a moment. What we usually do when we get ready to make jerky, which is generally around Christmas time, I'm a little later this year because I was sick for a while, but we shop for really good buys on boneless roasts, and they can pretty much be any kind of a boneless roast. But this time Jim and I went out to our freezer and we found a couple of roasts that have been out there for more than a year. And so we have been thawing those roasts. One was just a boneless chuck roast, and the other was a boneless top round roast. And so we have some pretty good meat to work with. Now, Jim spent some time this morning cutting this into strips. Generally what we do is when we buy a nice roast from a grocery store, we ask the butcher to slice it into jerky strips for us, which are about 1/8 of an inch. But Jim sliced these, and they are large, and we don't care because jerky is jerky is jerky. And so there are going to be some odd shapes. And just so that you know, we have put Stearamine on this counter several times today, and I've washed my hands. So a lot of times I don't show that on the video, but know that we're very, very careful with safety issues, washing hands, and making sure our countertop is cleaned before and after doing meat. And so this is about the size that these pieces are going to be. Now, what I'm going to do is in this oversized bowl right here, I'm going to mix up a double recipe of our marinade. And I will put this recipe in at the bottom of the video so you all can have it. And it is just as easy as can be. And so the regular recipe calls for 1 cup each of soy sauce and Worcestershire sauce. The regular recipe makes enough marinade for 3 to 5 pounds of meat. And I have 7 pounds of meat, so I'm going to double the recipe. So I'm going to use all of the rest of this, and I'm just going to pour it in. And I need 2 cups. And I have another backup ready to go, but I think this was just about 2 cups. Can't see it very well. 2 cups on the money. All right, so the next is 2 cups of Worcestershire. And we need about another cup. So here's a new one we just took off the shelf. All right, so that's in place now. So we'll put in the rest of the ingredients. All right, I'm going to start with the dry ingredients because the rest are wet. And this calls for 1 teaspoon in the regular recipe, so I'm doubling that. So I'm going to take 2 teaspoons, and these are dried onion chips. And I am not using my home dehydrated onions. I'm using commercial ones because they are very tiny, and that's what we like in our jerky for the flavoring, is the little tiny chips. And then it calls for 4 teaspoons of black pepper. That would be 8 teaspoons, which is 2 tablespoons, plus, man, I can't get all these things off. So 1 tablespoon is 3 teaspoons, 6 teaspoons. It calls for a lot of pepper. And then 2 teaspoons. So that's a total of 8 teaspoons of ground black pepper. And then liquid smoke. And I use Wright's liquid smoke. Over the years, that's been the one that I have found that I like the best. And it calls for 2 teaspoons, which doubled is 4 teaspoons. I'm just going to do a tablespoon plus a teaspoon. Oh, smell. And that's all there is to it. That is the entire recipe. We are done. I'm going to stir it up, get the pepper wet. Check the volume to see how much we have. It's still not much above the 4-cup line, so that means because I have evened out the meat, I have 3.5 pounds in each of these bags. I have 4 cups of the marinade. I'm going to put 2 cups in each bag. The USDA does permit us to do jerky, and they have a special way that they like to see it done, and they have a tested recipe. Now this recipe isn't quite their recipe. It has some similarities, but it has enough of the ingredients in it that there is a little bit of the preservative enough here that we can actually put this jerky in our dehydrators. We can't do other meats in the dehydrator. It just is not safe for things like hamburger or other strips of meat to be done. Now with this marinade, it makes it okay. Okay, so the first thing that I'm going to do is put 2 cups in each one of these bags. And that was just a little bit shy. And the rest goes in here. Now what's going to be really important is that this is going to go in the refrigerator overnight, and then it will be tomorrow morning when we get up before we will put this in the dehydrator. But what has to happen, what must happen with jerky, with this marinade, is that each piece in here has to get into that marinade. And because it's all glommed together, that may be a little bit difficult. So every little while, I'm going to come in, take it out of the refrigerator, and put it on the bar just like this, and massage it around. I might even open it up and redistribute the meat so that I can be sure that every piece is getting coated with this marinade. We will be able to tell in the morning when we put these out on the dehydrator shelves if every part of it was covered, because any part that wasn't will be a bright pink, and then any part that does have the marinade will be the darker brown. So hopefully we'll see all darker brown in the morning. So I'm just going to put these in the fridge, and we'll see you in the morning when we are ready to put them into the dehydrator. The jerky has been in the refrigerator marinating for probably about 16 hours. I double bagged it just for safety's sake, and I went to the refrigerator half a dozen times in the past several hours and kneaded it like this. And now we are ready for the next part, which is to get it on the dehydrator trays. Now many of you ask what kind of a dehydrator we have. We have a Magic Mill. It has 6 plastic trays, and it comes with this little grid on the top, and it also comes with 3 solid trays that you've seen us use sometimes. We don't sell anything. We don't get any kind of kickbacks. on anything. That's a violation of our personal ethics to do that. And so, because we get so many questions about what kind of a dehydrator we have, and I'll show you a little bit more about it when we put these trays in. So, the reason that I'm wearing gloves, two reasons, is of course for food safety, for cleanliness. And then the second reason is because this marinade gets in my hands and under my fingernails when I do it bare-handed. So I prefer to do it with gloves on. Now when these are all marinated and you can see how dark they have turned, that's because they have absorbed some of the marinade. And we put these on the trays in a single layer. We don't want any overlapping. Now when you hand cut, at least when we hand cut, we're going to have places on the meat that are thicker than other places. Like this is quite a thick piece. So it is likely that we will be taking these out of the dehydrator just in piecemeal. As they get finished, then we will take them out. And placing these is like doing a jigsaw puzzle. Oh, this is just going to be wonderful jerky. This recipe has been in our family for years and years. And I used to make it for packages of it and then send them to my children all over the country after they left home. And I haven't done that for a few years. But I gave them all the recipes, and they all have dehydrators, and so they can do it themselves too. Now it will probably take 10 or 12 hours for these to completely dry, and what we want is we want them a little bit bendy. We do not want them so dry that they're going to, when we bend them, that they snap in half. I'm going to finish putting these on the trays off camera, and we'll bring you back when we're ready to put them in the dehydrator. I have 6 trays ready to go, and I have this much meat left, probably about 3 trays, maybe 4 trays left. So we'll be doing this in 2 batches. So I'm going to put this back in the double bag in the refrigerator, and this will be perfectly fine to leave another day. I've left it in the marinade 2, 3, 4 days at a time when I'm doing great big huge batches. So that's the good thing about this marinade. Now the next thing is to get it over into the dehydrator. Before we do that, I want to tell you a couple of things that the USDA says regarding jerky. They give us the option. It is not recommended, so it's not a hard and fast rule. But what they say is if we were to have emptied the bags of meat into a pot and then brought it to a boil and boiled it in the marinade for 5 minutes, that is a more sure way of getting rid of any possible contaminaants. And then the other time that you can do that as well is after we take it out of the dehydrator, we can put it in the oven on a low setting and keep it there for a while too. And that will ensure a longer shelf life. Ours doesn't last that long, and so I'm not too concerned about a long shelf life for these. I do other things with meat, but in any case, let's go get these in the dehydrator. Okay. So I brought this little light over so you can see inside our dehydrator. I like a box type dehydrator, and the fan is on the back wall, and that gives for pretty even distribution of heat. I do have to come and flip them around with some foods. Some foods do just fine with it. So let's get these last 3 in. The door slides in like this, and then I'm turning this on. Now, the temperature right now is at 158. USDA recommends 140. I do mine at the highest setting, which is 158. I want it to get done fast to reduce the risk of bacterial contamination. Now, in terms of the timer, I'm going to be setting the timer for maximum, even though it won't go that far. That way it won't stop in the middle. 19 hours and 30 minutes is the max on this, and I suspect that it will be done in about 10 hours, which would put us, 10 or 12 hours, which would put us close to between 8 and 10 o'clock this evening. We may not bring you back until tomorrow, because if I can get enough dried and out, I'll put the other ones in to go overnight, and then we'll have the full batch ready to show you in the morning. So we will see you when this is all done and we're ready to show the final product. I was up way too early this morning. I woke up and couldn't get back to sleep, and finally just got up at 4 a.m. and I checked the dehydrator, and the last of the jerky was completely finished. So I moved it into this bag, but I want to show you what it does to my dehydrator trays. It makes a big mess out of my dehydrator trays. And there are also some drips on the bottom of the dehydrator too. So whenever I make jerky, I make as much as I'm going to for one whole year, and then I leave it alone because it makes such a mess. I have my sink over here filled with hot soapy water, so I'm just going to drop those trays right down in that hot soapy water. And here's my Clorox. I like to really clean my trays between food batches, and so I usually just put a blurb of Clorox in. That's probably about 1/4 to 1/2 of a cup in my sink. And we will just let those soak while we talk for just a couple more minutes, and then we'll see how they do. Okay, so when I take them out of the dehydrator, I will put them right in a plastic bag, but I do not seal the plastic bag because they're hot and they create condensation, and I want all of that condensation to go up and out rather than to stay in the bag. So let's take a look at some of these to see how they turned out. Okay, this was quite a thick piece. It's bendable. It doesn't break. When we pull it apart, it's very dry on the inside. There's no pink meat. That's exactly what we want. Same with this one. This one has some heavier areas, so I want to be sure that those are done. They bend and they're very brown and not any pink. And the same thing with all of them. I might have some that are a little overdone and would actually just snap, but you know what, those get eaten too. And so one of the things that happened with this time is that one of my sons is staying with us for a few days on winter break, and he's doing some repairs on we have a roof leak that has made some damage here in the kitchen. And so he is repairing that. Well, of course, that's right by the dehydrator. And so yesterday, the first one started to get done at around 6 hours. And as I went back periodically to check, I kept noticing that there appeared to be missing pieces from some of those trays. So he was helping himself and continued to do that all through the day. So what you see here is not the full yield of what we actually produced. Probably double this, and it would be about right. So the next question is, how do we store jerky, and for how long? Well, the USDA recommendation is to not store it longer than 2 weeks, that it should be consumed within 2 weeks. Well, we have never done that. I make it and I ship it off to my kids. I have to hide it around here or it disappears. And so the other day I was rummaging through a kitchen drawer behind Jim and found a bag of jerky that was probably more than a year old. It was just in a baggie just exactly like this. It was sealed, small. It was a smaller size. And I could tell, of course, that it was old. And so I opened it up and sampled some, and it was obviously old, but it was something that I would consume in difficult times for sure. So you can store it in plastic bags like this, or you can even store it in glass jars, or this is a peat jar, P-E-T-E or P-E-T. This had food in it. I don't remember exactly what it was. Maybe crackers of something that we got at Costco. On the bottom, in the recycled triangle, you won't be able to see it because it's so faint, but right below the recycled triangle are the letters PETE, and sometimes it would be PET. That plastic is food safe plastic, and it has a screw-on lid, which is exactly what we like. And so I could also store the jerky in this jar. And I could vacuum seal it if I had the right kind of a vacuum sealer, or I don't have a jar attachment that fits over this, so it would have to be a canister type. Or I could put an oxygen absorber in here and it would prolong it just a little bit longer, I think. But just be very, very cautious with jerky. It's meat, and there may be spots in here that are not completely dry all the way. Here's a very thick one. So this is a tiny, tiny tad pink. I would not say that that is raw by any stretch of the imagination, but it is not as dry brown as other parts, and so this might be one that we would want to eat right away. So there you have it on jerky. It's a pretty exciting and fun thing to do, and this recipe is quick and it's very easy. It takes very little of my time to do it. It takes more of Jim's time if he's cutting the meat, but when we have a butcher, that wasn't what I meant to say. When we have a butcher slice the meat for us, it is really a very easy process and not time consuming at all. And our family just loves jerky, but we make a batch and then we eat it. We don't really store it. So thanks for being with us, and we'll see you at our next video.